everybody, and welcome back to my brand new podcast, Theories from a Daydreamer. How are you all doing? I hope you're doing well. My name is Libby and I'm honestly so excited and happy that you're here. I really hope you enjoyed last week's video. I absolutely loved editing it and filming it and just creating it for you guys, and everything we learned in there as well. I really enjoyed it, and I just think it came out really great, especially for a first go. I've loved that I've started prepping all the social media and different platforms for it. Please follow me on all of them if you haven't already. They'll be linked in the description. Yeah, I just think it's coming out really good. Everything that was in my mind is kind of fitting together. I love that it's following that more like 90s 2000s retro digital camera style. I really think it looks really cool, and I'm really enjoying filming these. It's so nice to take a passion that I already have and do in my spare time. I'm always looking at Disney World and learning about Disney World and just really finding as many facts and secrets as I can, and the fact that I can actually put that into some form of content and share it with other people is just so special, and I'm really enjoying kind of the creative process that comes out of making these podcasts. So yeah, I really hope you enjoyed episode 1. I did actually sit down yesterday and start planning out all the episodes that I'm kind of thinking about, because honestly there is so many in my head. As I kind of mentioned last week, Disney World and just the Disney company in general is such a massive company. There are so many things we could possibly talk about, and yeah, I just felt like I needed a little bit of a plan in my head. So I broke it down, and I think actually they fit quite nicely into 7 or 8 episode series. So I think that's how I'm going to start running it. I'm going to film about 8 episodes in bulk, so uploading every single week. And then after the 8th episode, that will be the end of the series or the season, and I'll take a couple weeks break just to get back on top of myself, because honestly, editing and prepping social media for a podcast is no joke. There's so many things you've got to think about. Obviously, I'm filming right now. I've got the microphone plugged in, my laptop's over there, filming all my audio. I've got my iPad here with all my show notes on, and it is a big task. Like I said, I absolutely love it. I'm really enjoying it, but it is very consistent. I do think I am going to really thank myself in the future after them 8 episodes where I have that little bit of time to kind of get back on top and start again for a new season. It also means that I'm putting the best possible content in front of you guys, as well as I'm giving myself that time to research and really find out what I want to talk about. I don't want to just be uploading for the sake of it, and I really think this is a good opportunity to go. So that is moving us on to the first season, which we're currently in. We are on episode 2 of the first season. Obviously last week we were talking about the Florida project and how Walt Disney bought all the land that Walt Disney World is on now, and today we are going to be talking about the windows down Main Street, which kind of marries up quite nicely and follows on from the last video, because in the last video we were talking about how Walt Disney created a lot of shell or fake companies to buy the land for Walt Disney World, just to keep suspicions low and make sure that the media wasn't talking about him or his company until he was ready, and also kept the land prices down as well because the owners didn't know who they were selling to. And actually all these shell companies are displayed in the windows down Main Street, kind of to mark that they were a really important part of the process of building Magic Kingdom, and it just makes it a really fun Easter egg for people as well. If you are a Disney nerd, it's always nice to walk down Main Street and kind of point out that window and tell your group that you're with exactly what that means. And I just think it's a really nice idea. Obviously, there are so many windows down Main Street. That is only one of them, which we spoke about in last week's episode, but there are so many different windows, so many different main streets as well across the world, and I just thought they deserved their whole own episode. I think this even might be a series in itself, because I've only really scraped the surface with the history of it so far. There are so many to talk about, so many important people that are mentioned on the windows down Main Street. So yeah, let's get straight into it. So like I did in last week's video, I actually do want to give a little brief overview of Main Street and the windows. Just in case you've never been to Disney World before, I want this podcast to be a really enjoyable experience for lots of different people, whether you've been on 1 trip, 10 trips, 50 trips, 100 trips, whether you're an annual pass holder, whether you really want to go out there and you've never been before. I want to make sure everyone has a little piece of knowledge and understanding to take away with them. So basically, Main Street is the first section of land that you walk into when you go into basically any of the Disney parks. Magic Kingdom, obviously in Florida, Disneyland California, Disneyland Paris, and then Shanghai and Tokyo also have their own versions of Main Street. It's not exactly called Main Street, but it's a very similar vibe, and it does have windows as well. So you've probably seen tons of photos of it. Obviously at the end of Main Street there is usually the castle there, looking beautiful, and it is basically just this really long street that has townhouses and shops all down it, and you can walk through them, you can walk into them. They're all working stores or places within their own right. There's lots you can do around Main Street. I think it's quite underrated actually, because people normally just go straight to the castle and then to all the other lands around the Disney parks, but it is a really, really special place, and obviously the first thing that you see when you're walking into the magic. So Main Street was created from the very beginning in Walt Disney's first park in California, and it was actually created to resemble Walt's memories from his childhood. So he lived in the turn of the 20th century in an American town, and Main Street is meant to replicate that, which is honestly insane. I know Main Street is very beautiful and picturesque. Obviously it's very clean and tidy. I can't imagine that Walt's real life town was exactly like that, but it's lovely to know that this actually does have a bit of history behind it. And when Walt was creating it, he was actually pulling information from a really core memory in his mind. So I just think that's really cool. Obviously it was first built in Disneyland California, and then it moved over to Magic Kingdom. It's almost an exact replica in Magic Kingdom, following that very same traditional turn of the century style. And then it went to Disneyland Paris. Again, it looks very, very similar in Paris. And then when it went over to Shanghai and Tokyo, it did start to tweak a little bit, but you can still very much tell when you're there that it's meant to be their version of Main Street USA. So while we're on talking about kind of the heritage and the era that Main Street is based around, I wanted to throw in a little bit of a fun fact. So obviously, like I said, Main Street USA was based around the turn of the 20th century of Walt Disney's hometown, and the Grand Floridian is actually meant to be this very same era. But whereas Main Street USA is meant to be kind of your hometown, what you see every single day, the Grand Floridian was meant to be more of this luxurious experience where people would go on one-off holidays, or you would see more wealthy people go, because obviously it is a lot more eccentric and posh when you walk into the Grand Floridian. Still very beautiful. Main Street is still very beautiful as well, but I just found that interesting that Walt was basing both of these places off the same time period, but for sort of different amounts of wealth and comfort, which is really, really interesting. I couldn't quite find the time or the source where he said this, but Walt did actually talk a little bit more about why he wanted to create these lands in these eras. Obviously at the time when Disneyland California was created, Walt's childhood wasn't that far in the past, whereas now 50 years later, it's a lot longer ago, the turn of the century, obviously. So in Walt Disney's speech, he said, "For those of us who remember the carefree times it recreates, Main Street will bring back happy memories. For younger visitors, it is an adventure in turning back the calendar to the days of their grandfather's youth," which I just think is so, so lovely. Obviously, I think he's speaking through his own sort of perspective of it. He's obviously within that more like grandfather era when he's giving this speech and saying that it's going to be really sentimental for obviously older people visiting the park, but equally for younger people, it's able to give them a step back in time, and you can show them kind of how you grew up, where you grew up, what it was like when you grew up, which is just a very special memory. And although we can't quite have that same level of appreciation for it now, obviously there's not a lot of people around nowadays that was in that sort of era. It's really lovely to think that when Disneyland was first created, that was kind of the incentive and motive to kind of be a real life, like turn back in time, like he said, for families of all ages to go, and you can offer some advice or some history to your family and really kind of live in that moment, which I just think is so special. It's so cool, and it will be interesting to see if they do something like that in the future of Disney parks. Obviously have something that's more retro for our age range, so maybe do it in the 80s or 70s or 60s, so when grandparents go with their young children, they can take them back in time, like they say, and show them what life was like when they lived it in their youth, which is honestly just such a fun idea. I really do wonder whether they will do this again, because I think it's really cool and just such a sweet way to bring families together in the park, which is what Walt always wanted. So as many people probably know, Walt Disney didn't actually start by creating theme parks. The Walt Disney Company was actually an animation studio to begin with, focusing in film and movies. And another fun fact about Main Street is that this is actually replicated as soon as you walk into the parks nowadays. So Main Street is actually meant to replicate as if you are walking into a movie theatre, which is such an interesting concept. And when you think about it and start unpicking it, it makes so much sense, but I've just never really thought about it without hearing about it first. It's crazy. Obviously, as you walk in Magic Kingdom in Florida, I can't vouch for the other parks because I've not actually been to any others, but you do walk through like a tunnel first, which goes under the train station, and there are posters all on the walls that do sometimes show movies, but are usually showing like posters of the rides that are in the park. So these are meant to like mimic the posters that you see at a movie theatre, kind of showing you what's coming up as you walk through, which is crazy to think about. I know I keep saying crazy, but it is like when it all pieces together, it makes so much sense. Obviously, you then walk through and you can instantly smell popcorn and sweet treats, which again just makes you feel like you're in this dream world. All the buildings are force perspective as well, which means that the first floor is normal size. Obviously, you can walk all in the stores down Main Street and nothing seems squished or contained. They're all normal size stores, if not a little bit bigger. But then when you go up to the second level of the store, no one can go upstairs in Main Street. It's almost just like a fake level. I don't even know if you can get inside Main Street stores on the second level, but basically they are half the height of the first floor. So, and then if there's a third floor as well, it is half the height of the second floor. So as you go up, the buildings actually do get smaller, but because it's all done in moderation to each other, it makes them look taller than they are, if that makes sense. And this is something that is done in movies all the time because obviously you want to try and get everything in shot and kind of set the scene, but you don't want stuff to be towering over you, and sometimes you can't always get that in the camera. So this is a movie trick that is usually used. I don't know if it's used so much to this day, but definitely in the past it was used very regularly when they were doing their own set building and didn't have CGI and all of that. And this is also used down Main Street. So again, it does kind of pop you in that movie setting. And obviously everything's very beautiful and clean, almost like you're not in the real world, which obviously you're not, you're in Disney World. All the employees across all the Disney parks as well are called cast members. They're not called workers or employees or anything like that. They're called cast members, which again literally means people that work in a movie or on a movie set or in theatre or something like that. And then finally, obviously the windows do tie into this as well. They are meant to work as the credits when you leave the park. Obviously you can still see them when you're walking in, but you're more taking in the ambience of the stores and the castle in front of you. But then when you're walking back, Walt Disney's vision was to make the windows more apparent. Obviously there's not as much to look at the end apart from the tunnels that you'll be exiting out of, so you're more open to looking around and seeing what else is around you. And this is when the windows tie in, and they are meant to replicate the credits as you are leaving, like at the end of a film, when all the credits come up at the end for everyone who helped on the project, made the film a reality. And this is meant to be mimicked in the windows, which I think is such a great idea. I honestly would have loved to be a fly on the wall when they were sat around their meeting table and thinking about that and kind of just piecing things together. I know I've just picked out a few bits here, but I'm sure you can keep diving into it and picking it apart and realize more things that the Disney park, and specifically down Main Street of the parks, that make it seem like you're in a movie. And have just stepped into it almost. So going back to the windows, this was actually something which was implemented and set by Walt Disney himself. He chose the very first people who were mentioned on the windows down Main Street and made it into a fun tradition that people kind of strive and work for, and it is still kept to this day. So the windows that we are talking about down Main Street are on them second and third floors that we were talking about on the force perspective. People can't actually go up there. There's nothing in them, I don't think. If there is, it's probably just storage and stuff like that. But this is where you can find some really important names in the Disney World company and just add that little bit more interest and knowledge to your Disney holiday. So basically these windows typically feature a fictional business name which refers to a hobby or skill or story which the Imagineer, which is mentioned in the window, also relates to. Over the years this has branched out a little bit more, as obviously more people have been going through the Walt Disney World company and making a difference. You never really want to get rid of someone's window. Obviously it is still just as important as the new ones that are coming through, so Disneyland and Magic Kingdom, I believe, have branched out into putting more windows in other areas of the park, including Frontierland and Toontown in Disneyland as well, just so they can give mention to more people that deserve it, but just not risk having to remove previous people's windows as well. Although this seems like fun, and like I said, there are hundreds of windows down Main Street, but also when you start branching out into the rest of the park as well, there are very strict rules to getting a window down Main Street, and you have to stick to them to be within with a chance of getting it. These again were implemented by Walt Disney. I do think they're not quite as strict now, but definitely in the day when he was around and he was creating the windows and seeing them being put up, he was very, very regimented in what you had to be to achieve these windows. And I think even till today, they do keep them in mind when they are giving Disney Legends their windows. So there are 3 rules. The first one is you have to be a retired employee. If you are working at Disney World, you cannot get a window. You have to wait until you're retired to get it. I guess this is because it's meant to be like a final hurrah. You're meant to be putting your stamp on the park and kind of putting a pin in everything you've done and everything that you've accomplished. So I guess the window basically is meant to signify the end. So they have to wait until you're retired. You've done everything you can do for the Walt Disney Company and you're going on to that next chapter, and your window is there to commemorate and celebrate your time there. So that is fact number 1. The second one is that it is only for employees who have gained the highest level of respect and achievement within the Walt Disney World Company. So unfortunately, not everyone that works at Disney World is going to get a window. They are not entitled to a window. It is only people that have done really, really special things for the company and will go down as a Disney legend in history. And then the third and final factor, which I think is actually probably the hardest one, is that both the park management team and the Imagineering team have to agree with the name being put on the window. So if you are a person in the Disney company who is looking to get a window in the future, you have to make sure that you're nice to everyone and make everyone's job a lot easier or a lot more enjoyable, a lot more fun, because when it boils down to it, everyone gets a say as to whether they think your name should be up on that window. And if you've upset someone, if someone doesn't think you're worthy of it, they can literally strip that from you, which is honestly crazy as well. But I think it's a really nice idea too. Obviously, everyone wants to feel valued and part of the Disney magic, so I think it is quite a good idea that they do branch out to other people, because you don't just want people's names being popped up there willy-nilly and for no reasoning at all. You want really key special people up there which you know you can talk about, and they've got so much evidence to back themselves up as well. So based off of these 3 rules, it is clear to see that these windows are only for Disney legends, and it's actually one of the highest honors that the Walt Disney Company can give them. Like I said, they do not hand these out lightly. You are not entitled to one for starting there. It is a real honor and most people do not get them. So if you do get a window, you are a truly, truly special person. So that is a little bit of background of the windows, and now I'm going to just start talking and breaking down some of them which are around the park. Interestingly, I'm actually going to start with Magic Kingdom and then talk about Disneyland California. I know that's not in chronological order, but I just wanted to talk about Magic Kingdom first because a lot of the windows which I'm going to be speaking about are to do with Walt Disney's family. Obviously, when Disneyland in California was created, Walt's family was a lot smaller than when it was to the creation of Magic Kingdom. As time went on, it's just what happens. So there are a few mentions of family members down the Disneyland Main Street, but for the most part, most family names were saved till Magic Kingdom opened in 1971. As the families grew, they had a lot more windows to play with, and I think they probably just had more of an understanding of whose names they wanted to pop up there, where down Main Street USA in Disneyland California, they probably just popped a lot of names of people who worked on the project and helped bring it to life. That very first park obviously was a massive achievement, so probably a lot of people that helped on the project and were significant parts in it got popped on the windows. So actually when you pop down everyone who helped on that project, you didn't actually have that many windows left at the end of it, whereas in Magic Kingdom there were so many more to play with. So let's get straight into it. Obviously Walt Disney unfortunately didn't make it till the opening of Magic Kingdom in 1971. He sadly passed away before that, so he never actually got to see the opening of Magic Kingdom and Walt Disney World in general. This was spoken on in more detail in the previous episode, but his brother Roy O. Disney kindly took up Walt's position and made sure that everything was followed through into exactly what Walt wanted for Magic Kingdom. And And of course, that is such an amazing thing to do. Obviously, kind of in a way, putting your life on pause to see out what your brother wanted and his visions, and making sure that everyone would have the opportunity to see what Walt wanted is just honestly such a special story and just so, so lovely. It is like the ultimate thing you can do as a brother, I feel. So, of course, Roy O. Disney does have a window down Main Street, USA in Magic Kingdom, and this is actually one of the first windows you will see as you walk in. It is above the confectionery store and it is at the very top. So I think there's 3 floors to the confectionery and it is at the very top, and it is 3 windows across the middle. So the middle one says Roy O. Disney, just his name, and then either side it says if we can dream it, we can do it, and dreamers and doers, which is so, so lovely. Obviously, if we can dream it, we can do it was a Walt Disney quote, and that is what I believe he said to a lot of his workers when they were going through these tricky times or they were trying to make this dream a reality. So just the fact that it's been popped next to Roy's name is so, so special and just so, so nice to almost feel like he's got his brother there with him as well. This is where it's going to get a little bit confusing because Roy O. Disney had a son who's called Roy E. Disney, and he also has his own window down Main Street which mentions his name as well as his family's name. They love the sea and were avid sailors, so it's all sailing themed around the windows. There's a lot of like wheels and anchors and stuff like that around the windows. And again, this is a 3-window layout and it honours his wife, Patty, and his children, Roy, Abigail, Susan, and Timothy. Again, another Roy. It must have been like you name your first boy Roy or something like that, but that must get so confusing at parties. Now, opposite the Emporium down the hidden street of Main Street, so there are a few hidden streets that lead to nowhere down Main Street. They're just kind of little like places which you can go and sit. It's a little bit more quiet. There's normally some tables and seats around there if you've got any food. I always recommend sitting down them because it's a really lovely place to take in what's going on, but like I said, it's a little bit off track, it's a little bit more hidden, and there's some really lovely windows up there as well. So down the one opposite the Emporium, like I just said, there is one dedicated to Elias Disney. So it says Elias Disney, then underneath it says contractor 1895, and Elias Disney was actually Roy and Walt's father. This window is also in Disneyland, California as well. It is actually an exact replica in Magic Kingdom, and Elias Disney owned a contracting business in Chicago, so that's why it says contractor underneath it, and then 1895 was the year that he was born, which is so lovely that he's mentioned in there. Obviously, you would mention your parents in there if you had the opportunity to, and I just love that it's exactly the same in both parks as well. I think that's really special too, and kind of just adds a sentiment to it and makes it easy to spot out if you're visiting both parks as well. There is also a window for Walt Disney's daughter, who is called Diane, and her husband Ron. Ron worked for the Walt Disney World Company for a very long time, and like I said, they've both got their window up there too. I don't quite remember where this is located. I couldn't quite find it, but yeah, it is up there, and it basically just says Ron and Diane. It doesn't have anything else around it, but it's just a really sweet memory as well. And like I said, if you know who they are, it's an incredibly important window to pick out when you can. Not so much related to Walt Disney's family, but above the Crystal Art Store on the main strip of Main Street, it says M Lot Real Estate Investment. And that is actually the window that we mentioned in last week's podcast, and it is a tribute to all the men that helped buy up the land, and it also mentions all the fake shell company names as well. So that is where it is. I know last week I told you I wouldn't tell you, but when I found out where it was, I couldn't not tell you. There it is. I won't break down into what names are used though, or what shell company names there are. I'll let you look at that for yourself. But yeah, that is a big window and it has a lot of information on it. Obviously, like I said at the top, it says M-Lot Retail Estates, and then it breaks down into all the men's names that helped, and then all the shell company names. So there is tons of information on that one. And then just for Magic Kingdom, moving on to the main man himself, obviously Walt Disney has a window. Not only does he have one window, he actually has 2 windows. So the first one is actually just as you walk in again. It is above the train station. So you see it almost as you're leaving, probably more so than as you're walking in. And it is a window that says Walt Disney World's Railroad Office, keeping dreams on track, Walter E. Disney, Chief Engineer. like I said, that's all kind of broken up across the window. But if you didn't know, Walt Disney absolutely loved trains. It was kind of his own little passion and hobby, aside from the parks, obviously. He had his own train that you could drive in his garden. I think it was like a miniature train, but you could sit on it. There's loads of photos of it in One Man's Dream in Disney's Hollywood Studios. But he absolutely loved trains. They were so important to him. So the fact that he's been mentioned on the railroad is really, really lovely, and just shows that people really appreciated Walt Disney and knew a lot about him apart from just his work and his dreams and stuff like that. They actually knew about his hobbies and what he really enjoyed in his free time when he had free time. And then his second window is at the other end of Main Street, and this is on the back side of the Ice Cream Plaza, and it says Walt E. Disney Graduate School for Design and Master Planning. And obviously that just explains Walt Disney in a nutshell. Obviously, he was the whole reason that Magic Kingdom and all of the Disney parks came to light. So the fact that he's been popped under master planning and design, it's just so true. And it's also been represented as a graduate school as well, which he did. He taught a lot of people how to do a lot of things and shared a lot of different passions as well, and kind of sparked interest for things that weren't even jobs before Walt Disney kind of got to these people, which is honestly so special. I think it's such a great window to have to commemorate him, and almost shows that he was kind of the teacher for this whole project, which he definitely was. And also something that is so special is that obviously this is on the back side of the plaza, like I said before, and the reason for it being on the back side means that this window is directly facing the castle. So it was created to make sure that Walt Disney was always looking out on the castle. He always had almost an eye looking at it, because truly Walt Disney World and Magic Kingdom was his biggest project to date. Even though he never got to see the end of it, it was such a massive project for him, such a big dream of his, and it did unfortunately outlive him at the end. He never got to see the final project, but just the fact that the window's there looking out on the castle 24/7, I just think is such a lovely way to honour him and remember him, and make sure he is in a way kind of taking in the magic and being able to watch everyone enjoy what he envisioned and what he wanted. I just think that's such a lovely touch. I know we're literally talking about a window, but I guess it is the sentiment of it, and just that, again, that extra thought that Imagineers and the Walt Disney Company put into every single detail, and the reasoning behind it. It is just so special. I absolutely love it. Literally, this is the first day in the UK where the sun has come out, and my hay fever has just started like crazy. I'm coughing and sneezing everywhere, so I feel like this is going to be a big edit for this video, but I'm going to run through some windows down Disneyland before I go. So these are all in Disneyland, California, as mentioned before. These were actually obviously created before the ones in Walt Disney World Magic Kingdom, which I just mentioned, but these are a few fun ones to just leave you with. So above the Disney Anna gift shop, there is a window dedicated to a man called Frank G. Wells, and he was actually once the CEO of Disney, and underneath his window it says Seven Summits Expedition, and this was a nod to him again and his hobbies, because he actually loved mountain climbing. So again, I just love how they kind of take two things and piece them together and make them work. There is also a window next to the entrance of the Great Moments of Lincoln Opera House, and there is a window dedicated to Robert Janney, and it also has the logo to Main Street Electrical Parade under it as well. And this is probably pretty self-explanatory, but he actually did create the parade, which is so special. Obviously it's in Disneyland, California, but it's also gone over to Walt Disney World's Magic Kingdom as well. I love the electric parade. I think it's something that people kind of forget about sometimes, but honestly, every time you kind of catch it by chance, I just really enjoy it. I think it's really fun and timeless, and to this day I enjoy it, even though it's really using the same technology as it did way back then. As mentioned before, Alice Disney does have exactly the same window in Magic Kingdom and in Disneyland, California. There is a window for Mark and Alice Davies, who are extremely important Imagineers. They are really special, and they actually have separate windows, but they are right next door to each other, and they are the only Disney husband and wife team who both have a window. So another Another fun fact, we'll probably do a whole separate podcast episode for this. Walt called his key animators in the 1950s his 9 old men, as kind of a nod to Franklin D. Roosevelt's 9 old men in the Supreme Court. I don't quite know that story. Again, if you want to know about it, let me know, and I'll do a little bit more research. And Mark Davies was actually one of these, so he's got his own window. He was one of the original 9 old men that Walt Disney had as his animators, and then his wife Alice was also a very special person in the Walt Disney World Company. She was in dress and design and created a lot of different costumes for both film and also the parks as well. One of her most well-known costume sets is for the New York World's Fair, where they actually entered the attraction It's a Small World, and she had to create 150 dolls costumes for all different countries and areas across the world, which was obviously a massive project, but she did it with grace and they came out looking amazing. Obviously, Small World is an attraction which has been replicated across multiple different parks. It is such an iconic ride to go on when you either go to Disneyland California or Magic Kingdom or Disneyland in Paris. And basically the vibe and the costuming all started with her, so she definitely deserves a window. And then finally, the last one, which I'm going to leave you with today, because they are one of my personal favourites, there is of course a window for the Sherman Brothers. This wasn't even presented to them that long ago. It was this side of the 2000s, which I know is still 23 years, but yeah, it's not something that's been up there for ages and ages and ages, considering how long they've been working with the Walt Disney Company. But if you don't know, the Sherman Brothers created a lot of different music and songs for both Walt Disney World films and movies, but also the parks as well. So their window does say, "Two brothers tune makers will write you a tune for a song." So they created a lot of different songs, like I said. Some of their most well-known being It's a Small World theme song, obviously that is so iconic, as well as the Tiki Room, Bedknobs and Broomsticks, the Jungle Book, the Aristocats, and many, many more. Honestly, they are such icons. They are literally the pinnacle of Disney legends in my mind. I grew up doing musical theatre and dance when I was younger, so I have danced to so many of their songs in the past. They are really sentimental to me, and I just love their music style. You can pick their sort of music out from a mile away. Yeah, and I just absolutely love them. But this podcast isn't just about them, so I will stop there. Again, maybe in future I will go into specific animators and kind of how they benefited the Walt Disney Company and what they did over their time with them, because that is the main thing when you boil this down. The windows down Main Street are for Disney legends. Like I said, they are one of the highest values of appreciation that the Walt Disney Company can give to their staff. So all the people that I mentioned on them are so special, and there are so many windows that we can continue going through. So like I said, we can definitely do a few more episodes of these and then even break down further onto specific Imagineers as well. But yeah, I hope that gave you a little bit of background. I literally feel like my mind's been going 100 miles per hour. Funnily enough, I didn't feel like I had enough research for this episode. I didn't think I had enough content to talk about, but there is so much. I have been talking non-stop and I haven't even scraped the surface, like I said. So I hope I didn't speak too quick. I hope you were still able to take a little bit of information, extract some stuff from me, and I just really hope you enjoy. I think that next time anyone who's listened to this podcast, as well as myself, go to Main Street, we will really start taking appreciation for them windows if we haven't already. There is a lot of people we need to give thanks to how Walt Disney World looks nowadays. It was a massive project. It still is a huge project, and we wouldn't be anywhere without all the cast members that made it happen. It's so important to be kind to everyone that you see at Walt Disney when you go, and also give thanks to all them windows too. The people that can't be with the company anymore, the people that made really big moves for the company, they all deserve credit, and all them windows are there for a reason. It's so nice that you can walk down there and just research one, search it on Google. So I'm going to propose a challenge. Next time you are down Main Street, whatever one that is, whether you're in California, Florida, Paris, Shanghai, or Tokyo, start having a look at them windows when you're sat waiting for the parade, or you're having an ice cream, or you're just taking a pause for a moment. Pick a window that you don't recognise, search a name, and learn something new about one of the Imagineers. I'm sure you will not regret it. Like I said, everyone has a reason for being up there, especially if it has a fun little quote or related to a different business. There's definitely a story behind that sometimes as well. But I really hope you enjoyed this podcast. Next week, we are actually going to be talking about the opening day of Magic Kingdom. This is mainly what the rest of the podcasts for this season are going to hold. They are all going to be talking about the first opening days, the first attractions of each park. So we're going to go in chronological order, first talking about Magic Kingdom, then Epcot, then MGM, which it was at the time, then Animal Kingdom, and then maybe even the water parks as well. So that should be super fun. There is a lot to unpack there, and even some of you guys listening might have been there for the opening days too, which will be so cool. It will be such a nice walk through time, and what the park was like to way back when it first opened to what it is like today. I think it's going to be a really fun episode. That's the main thing I absolutely love, looking at old videos and photos of what things were like compared to what they're like now, what things have stood the test of time and what things didn't last that long, really. So yes, like I said, I really hope you enjoy. Thank you so much for listening. If you got to this end of the video, leave me a comment down below of what you want to see in future, or send me an email, follow me on social media, do all that sort of stuff. Everything will be in the description, and I will see you next week in our Magic Kingdom episode. Bye.
Be educated, but I'm so frustrated. Hello to my loneliness. I guess that ignorance is bliss. Take me back to before I knew. Rewind, take it out of cue. Innocence can be a young man's game. Signed up for the hall of shame. I wish I knew how much I miss. Stay up, I feel so outdated. How can we look the other way? Sun is out, but the sky is gray. What would happen if I took a chance? It's always hard at first glance. I don't wanna, but I know I gotta do it. The truth is hard to swallow, I think I'll chew it. I wish I knew.